Breaking news bulletin. The Buckeyes are back. Welcome to the podcast. It is live at Land-Grant. This is also coming to you on delay on Tuesday morning. We're also coming back to do the podcast daily and drink beer then too. But welcome. We are going to mix everything together on the podcast, basically every format we do, and we're going to start it with a little bit of version of the daily. That's Bill Landis down there, Zach Boren, Jeremy Birmingham, and I am Austin Ward. And Zach, I feel like this has been the longest offseason ever. You ready for some football?
It's been really long. You know, I don't know why. I think maybe it's because the way last year ended with the Michigan game, then the Georgia game, and just things feeling like the season ended incomplete a little bit. And so there's obviously been so much talk and so many questions going into this season, especially at the quarterback position, that I know everyone around Columbus, myself, is super excited to get this season started, as are the guys over at the Woody.
All right, that happens on Saturday at 3:30 against Indiana. Long month of training camp. Bill, are you ready for it to be over?
For the season to be over already? No. Training camp.
I
am very much ready for training camp to be over. I agree with Zach. Like it's felt like an exceptionally long off season, and we were really kind of pining for things to talk about throughout a lot of the winter and spring, and just waiting for camp to arrive. And then camp got here, and it felt like it took forever. I guess it's because of the quarterback battle and all the back and forth on that, and trying to figure out what's going on. But it was an emotional end, I think, to the Ohio State season, which made the off season seem a bit longer, perhaps, than it does otherwise. Very much ready for the season to start.
How much shorter would the offseason have felt if Ohio State beat Michigan but still lost to Georgia?
A lot.
Zach's thinking real hard on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I that was a tough question. I don't know. You want to know something? I was distraught after the Michigan game. My wife will tell you, I couldn't see.
His wife is a Michigan fan.
I know. I couldn't see straight for a couple days.
She was distraught too, though.
But there was something about that Georgia game where it was like, you know, the Michigan game, the first half came about, we were dominating, then second half came, and it was like, there was probably to the end of the third quarter, like, this game's probably over with unless a miracle happens. That Georgia game, we were winning the entire game. Like, that game ended, and you're like, how did we lose? How did we lose? Which I think left you even, like, wanting more after that game, whereas in the Michigan game, it's just like, man, it happened.
It's similar in a way to the offseason after the 2019 year, where you lose to Clemson and you're like, there's no way that the season should have ended when it did, how it did. So we watched Ryan Day that offseason go to a different level of obsession. It was at times seemed unhealthy, seemed almost Urban Meyerish. And he hasn't had that vibe this offseason. It's been very relaxed. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, Zach, as a guy who's been around coaches like that, does that bother you, or is that something that you think maybe plays to his strengths because that's just who he is as a normal person?
I think it definitely bothered him. I think what you saw after 2019, he let more people in to kind of see how much it really bothered him, whereas in this year, I think it's bottled up. I think in the walls of the Woody, he's that same man after 2019 and maybe even tougher this offseason than he was then. I've talked to people over there. I've talked to Ryan. I've talked to players. They say this is the hardest offseason they've had in a very long time. So I think behind closed doors in front of the team, he's that same guy and going absolutely crazy and demanding excellence and making them compete for every little thing. But I think outwardly, especially to the media, I don't think they want him seeing him crack at all, right? Because as media people or the national media or fans, if they see Ryan Day kind of act like Urban, which is outside of his norm, they're going to think it's starting to get to him. They're going to think the last 2 years are taking a toll of him, and that's just not Ryan. Ryan wants to keep everything bottled in, stay calm, cool, collected, but behind closed doors, that dude's going crazy.
All right, when you talk about competing for everything, Zach, that's what August is for. It's a grind. We're going to talk plenty about the quarterbacks later on in the show tonight. We've got a whole segment, probably two, that we can devote to that. So let's set that one aside. Bill, start with you. We see two practices. I know that Zach went to at least one. That's a pretty small sample size, but from what you've seen and heard, who are you looking at as someone who's going to come out the gate and surprise against Indiana on Saturday?
I mean, we've talked about Kenyatta Jackson a lot to this point, so I don't know how much of a surprise he can be as we get ready for the opener. But, everyone talked about them having JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer back at defensive end, and the assumption was those guys were going to play most, if not all, of the meaningful snaps. And then something changed, probably at the start of spring, and started to build momentum throughout those 15 practices, certainly coming out of it. And he didn't put on a show, Kenyatta did in the spring game, I would say. That's not really a stage to do something like that, but we just never stopped hearing about him. And then you look at him when we get out of practice, and he moves differently than a lot of the guys do at that position. And there's some really good athletes there. So I don't know what it's going to look like for him in terms of workload, but I will buy all the hype with Kenyatta. He certainly looks the part. Whether or not he can match it with his play on the field, I guess, remains to be seen. But I am bullish on the idea of him really breaking out this year.
Zach? Is this like an under-the-radar guy, or is this a guy that people are excited to see?
Under the radar, over the radar,
everywhere, right?
Wherever your radar is.
This can be a common theme, I think, of my answers tonight, where I'm talking about, because I'm most excited. Everyone's excited to see the offense come Saturday, right? Who's the starting quarterback? Offensive line, granted, I think everyone knows what's going to happen there. Loaded wide receiver room, running back room. Everyone's excited to see the offense.
Are you...
I'm excited to see the
linebacker
defense.
is going to be excited about the defense.
No. I'm excited to see the defense, and I think, hey, listen, you can win every game if you give up 0 points.
Well, that's good math right there.
That's the thing. I am most excited to see Sonny Styles. Everyone's talking about him. He has all the hype. He's going to be able to do things that I don't think we've ever seen any defender do at Ohio State, from playing in the box, moving back to free safety, matching up against a tight end, almost getting close to the line of scrimmage sometimes, blitzing off the edge. He's going to be able to do so many different things. He's not an under-the-radar guy because everyone knows about him and everyone's excited to see him play on Saturday. But that's my guy. That's who I want to see show up on the film Saturday.
I can't believe that Bill just let you have him. Just gave it up.
Dude, he tossed it up.
Did you buy him that beer? Is that how that worked?
I did.
I thought you were going to talk about Malik Hartford.
Damn it, I was going to talk about Malik Hartford.
Hey, buddy.
See, that's why I asked under the radar or over the radar or whatever it might be. My under the radar guy is him.
He's been a guy that the people in the program cannot stop talking about. A freshman safety from Lakota West High School, and he wasn't really a huge recruiting win on the trail, according to most people, because he's from Ohio and you expected that he'd beat Ohio State. But he has moved up into the conversation, and it's not really a surprise at this point if he ends up starting for Ohio State, and it could be early in the season.
A coach I know, one of my good friends, someone I trust very much so, said Malik Hartford's the best freshman DB he's ever seen. And this is a guy who his first stop wasn't at Ohio State. He's been other places and has seen a lot of talented guys. Malik Hartford's the best true freshman DB he's ever seen.
Pretty good.
Wow. Zach gives you the
maybe got me silent. It's easier at safety than it is at corner to maybe stand out like that.
Yeah.
And especially in a defense that's going to allow you to do a lot of different things and be lined up in different spots at safety. Malik Hartford is a hitter. That kid likes to hurt people. And I personally, if you talk about what seen in the last couple weeks that has me most excited, it's the idea of Malik Hartford, Sonny Styles, and CJ Hicks, and all these guys out there at the same time, because that's a bunch of just guys who fly around, and they are much more physical. And I don't like to give too much credit to the SEC, but it's a much more SEC style athletic profile on the defense if you get those guys out there together.
If we're talking about people that surprised me, I don't know if Josh Simmons qualifies for that, but I didn't project that somebody would transfer in from San Diego State and then immediately be switched from right tackle to left tackle. Josh Fryer had played there all throughout spring. Thought he was looking pretty good. He talked about it was rough early on. Now I've got it. I'm really confident. And we all know, talk about the blind side, the importance of that position. And Josh Simmons takes that over. I thought that was not likely to happen, but it did. And that tells you how highly Justin Fry thinks about his skill set, how much confidence Ryan Day has in him, because you're talking about not just a new starter there, but Josh Fryer's a new starter on the other side of tackle, and Carson Hinsman, who also you can throw in a little bit in that surprise bucket, even if maybe we thought he would earn that job eventually. You have to watch those three people. That's three starting blockers for a new starting quarterback. Whoever wins it, you can consider, even with Kyle McCord having one under his belt, that's a new full-time starter. That's a tall task. That's a It's a lot to live up to. Big shoes when you're talking about Paris Johnson and a first-round top 10 pick. So he's somebody that you have to watch going into Saturday at Indiana. This will probably come up in a lot of the segments tonight. You go on the road and you play a Big Ten opponent, and this one in particular that has a coach who is willing to blitz from literally anywhere. That's a lot on the plate of Josh Simmons and Josh Fryer.
Well, no doubt, especially a coach that's maybe coaching for his job this year. You know, they talk about 2017. Tom Allen opened up his first year as head coach in Indiana against Ohio State. Now this year, going into possibly his last year, he's opening up the season with Ohio State. He's going to do everything possible and throw as much at Ohio State as possible, especially with it being a first-time starting quarterback.
Bill, when you look at the Sonny Styles equation there and how Malik Hartford might fit into it, we've spent, a lot of the last 8 months trying to figure out the different permutations at safety. Do you feel like you still have that nailed down going into the weekend?
Less so than I did maybe a couple weeks ago. I think that Sonny is never going to come off the field. I think I know that much. They might move him around depending on the matchups they face, but who else is playing with him, I guess now is perhaps a little more unclear with the emergence of someone like Malik Hartford, with like Cameron Martinez as a potential nickel against more difficult passing offenses and speedier slot receivers. So I think there's two stalwarts. I think it's Lathan Ransom and Sonny Styles in some iteration. I think the beauty of those two guys is they can kind of play anywhere, and then you just sort of fit in the pieces around them. But there are more pieces now to consider than I think there were at the start of camp, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Zach, is that right?
Maybe. Who's going to be the third guy? First team defense runs out Saturday, right? Buckeyes kick the ball off. Who's the third guy running out?
Right now, I would say Jahad Carter, probably.
I would say Cam Martinez.
See, I think Jahad Carter would be like number 4 on my list. I don't know why. I don't have any information. I just do. I think
Indiana's going to throw the ball around a lot.
No doubt.
In my mind, I think
if anything, if they're saying, hey, seniority rules here, Josh Proctor will run out there, right? If I think they go, hey, skill, we want to get some guys reps underneath their belt, I think Malik Hartford's that guy. I think he'll run out there. If it's another thing where, hey, we want to get guys playing time, it very well could be Cam Martinez. I just don't know. Jahad Carter was injured during the spring for a long time. He was injured some in fall camp. I don't know if he's going to know the defense like some of those other guys will. And, Malik Hartford is a true freshman, but his ball skills just jump out at you every time you watch him play.
I think it's going to be Cam Martinez, but I think to your point about Malik Hartford, that it's easier to put him out there if you have him out there with Lathan Ransom and Sonny Styles to kind of be the guardians of what he's doing. You don't want to put him out there with two other guys that have not played a lot. Obviously Lathan Ransom is the most experienced guy in that group. So you put him out there. Sonny hasn't played a lot, but we all expect big things. But he can move around so much that it doesn't really matter where he's at.
Well, I also think it's different if you're playing at Notre Dame week 1, right? If this game's at Notre Dame, it's completely different. You're putting different guys out there. With it being at Indiana and you want to get some guys some confidence for what's going to come 4 weeks from now when you got Sam Hartman throwing the ball around, you need to get some guys some reps.
All right, we can talk a lot more about that as we roll along. We know you want to hear about the quarterbacks, and we will talk about them in a little bit. We're going to switch things up, get a taste of the Kings of Columbus podcast with Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. The three of us are going to step aside for a little bit, take a quick break, and we'll be back. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks after Doug and Bill.
All right, we're back on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. We're going to talk about Ohio State talent, Landis, because we like to put Ohio State into a little bit of a bigger context. We did some research comparing this Ohio State talent to past Ohio State teams and to some other contenders this year. I was a little surprised by my research. What did you think of your research?
I mean, they're always good, right? The baseline talent at Ohio State is more or less always where it needs to be to win a national championship. It is better than maybe I was anticipating when I did this research.
So let me do a little survey here to our loyal fans who have turned out here at Land-Grant Brewing. I did the top 24 players on Ohio State and Georgia this year. Top 12 guys on each side of the ball expected to play. Their average recruit rating. Okay? So I'm going to ask, do you think Georgia has a better overall recruit rating for the guys we expect to play, or does Ohio State have a better overall recruit rating for the guys we expect to play? If you think Georgia has a better recruit rating, make some noise. All right. There's a Georgia fan back there. There's some people who are realistic. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's the two-time defending national champs. That might be the correct answer. If you think Ohio State has a better player rating, make some noise. Okay, so now it's ruined. So everyone's supposed to be like, oh, it's definitely the two-time defending national champ who win the recruiting battles all the time. So I don't know, Landis, if these people are smarter than I expected or that they just vote for the Buckeyes and anything you put out there.
I think you telegraphed it.
Did I telegraph it? Do I have to go back? All right, 3, 2, 1. We'll try that again. And now you guys be surprised when I say that by my accounting, Georgia, their average player rating by recruiting for the guys who should play this year is 224. So the 224th best player in a recruiting class. Ohio State's is 151. So Ohio State is significantly better in the recruiting ratings of the guys who are expected to play compared to Georgia. So at times, you said Ohio State always has enough talent to win the national title. I would say the last couple of years, I have been uncertain of that. I don't know if I have agreed with that since 2019. Are you surprised by these numbers for this year?
No. The 2018 and 2019 recruiting classes, 2018 was ranked really well, but didn't really pan out. And we're sort of on the tail end of that now. 2019 was okay, small class. 2020, you started to see a little bit of an uptick in recruiting. Now, a lot of that was offensive leaning. It was receivers and quarterbacks mostly. 2021 and 2022 were two of the best recruiting classes we've seen at Ohio State. So it's the second and third year players on this roster rising up, a lot of them starting or playing contributing roles. So no, that all makes sense to me. But it is a point worth making that Ohio State's baseline talent is always where you want it to be. How many of those guys are actually contributing? Like the guys who are raising that average, how many of them are going to play? Some years that number is pretty low. People talk about wanting to play freshmen and sophomores more. I think that's what you're talking about. This year, all those guys who you were asking to play as true freshmen, and maybe you were frustrated that some of them didn't play, a lot of them are going to play, and that's why this number is what it is.
We've talked about that we think a key, for instance, to Zach's excitement about the defense for Ohio State is there is a baseline there, right? There's so many guys who are back. Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers and guys that you can rely on. Denzel Burke has played a gazillion snaps for a guy who's a true junior. But you think about elevating that defense, and I think you think about guys with a recruiting pedigree who are going to maybe by the middle and end of the year become the best players on that defense, because now Tommy Eichenberg's great. But if you're dropping Sonny Styles and Jordan Hancock and Kenyatta Jackson and guys like that on top of a baseline of talent, I think there's a chance that this talent, when we're talking about this was spurred by an email that I got from a listener, and I'm sorry I'm not giving you credit, but you know who you are, who said that they listened to what Landis and I did when we made our picks, and they said, I think you guys believe Ohio State's the most talented team in the country, but you're afraid to say it. And I don't think that's what I thought when we made those picks, but do you think Ohio State's the most talented team in the country?
They have a compelling argument. Yeah, I think they might be. Because even if you stack them up against some of the teams that are more trendy national championship picks, LSU, Florida State, like those teams don't stack up at all, sheer talent with Ohio State.
You looked up Florida State just to make my pick look terrible.
I did.
I picked Florida State to win the national championship, and we got here and you said their blue chip ratio stinks. What's wrong with you?
It's 41%.
Why do you say it? You don't have to say it to them. Just say it to me. You already said it to me. I know it's terrible. I feel bad about my pick now.
It's half of Ohio State's.
It's half. They're half as good. If they played Ohio State, they would lose 80-40. They're half as good as Ohio State, and I picked them to win the national title. Thanks, Landis.
Good job. I picked LSU, and LSU is 71%, so more respectable, but still 16% less than Ohio State.
So here's the real question. I have felt the last couple years that there, and I think we all saw it, there was a recruiting dip in the crossover from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. There was a couple assistant coaches in there who maybe their recruiting wasn't up to par. Jeff Halfley leaves and you lose it.
Billy Davis.
I'm not here to call people out, just you. But yes, there are people that they weren't going out and winning national battles for some of the people they needed to win national battles for. You have Clark Phillips, Jeff Halfley leaves, Clark Phillips decommits. That's an issue. So we know how it didn't work. I think for the first time, probably since, I would even say it with the 2020 team, because some of the teams, they were so good in certain spots, it made up for things. I think it's the first time since 2019 where mostly across the board, they are talented enough to do it. We have talked about offensive line. It's not a million other places you go beyond that. You got to figure out quarterback. But I think it is back to a standard. I think it is back to an Ohio State standard. And I think whenever we talk about were there coaching issues the past couple of years, can you call a better game, Jim Knowles in year one, a lot of those things, I think we have to keep in mind, I think there was a legitimate talent dip, especially in the back half of the defense, the back seven, that affected them. And I think that's over. And if that's over, then what's holding them back? Maybe nothing.
I think that's why there's so much angst about like the 2023 recruiting class and the 24 class, not whether or not it's going to be good, whether or not the talent will be dispersed throughout the positions and not revert to being so receiver heavy and quarterback heavy, because we know that's going to be good. It's can you get like dudes on the defensive side of the ball. They did that in 2021 and 2022. I think they did that for the most part in 23, a couple misses here or there, obviously defensive end, safety. They seem to be more on the right track with 24. And I agree with you. If that's the case, like those are the spots, I think. Secondary, defensive line, a little bit of offensive line. Everything else, I think, sort of takes care of itself because they're so good at recruiting those positions. So if you get that rolling, then you're this every year.
Top 100 national recruits among the guys who are going to play. Georgia, 11 of 24. Ohio State, 12 of 24. So if you take anything away from this show, tell your friends, Philly Billy and French Vanilli told me that Ohio State is more talented than Georgia, right? And that's it. Thanks to everybody for coming out. We're going to end right there. You end, right? Leave them wanting more. Ohio State, more talented than Georgia. Boom.
Yeah. So blue chip ratio, right? Blue chip ratio is not gospel. You guys know what blue chip ratio is? It's like 4 and 5 star prospects. You have 65% or higher to be in contention for a national championship.
So it's the percent of your overall roster that is 4 and 5 star players, right?
Correct. Georgia is 77% and Ohio State is 85%.
Oh, so everybody already knew that too? Yeah. I'm coming in and dropping Ohio State's more talented than Georgia, and you literally just said the whole world already knew that.
Yes.
Is Ohio State's 85% number one?
No. Alabama's 90.
But Alabama doesn't have a quarterback. Alabama has no quarterback. Did you see the thing? Everybody on ESPN's pregame show picked Alabama to win the SEC, and I have seen multiple people pick Alabama to win the national title this year, and I think they're all nuts.
I think that is the belief that once we all start to doubt Nick Saban, that's like when he becomes his best, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but I don't like making picks to like, so I can say like, haha, I was right in the end. Like I try to actually project what I think will happen in a college football season, and Bama's going 9-3. So I don't know what we're doing here.
Does anyone have Nick Saban's phone number so we can call him and say that Landis said they're going 9-3? In 2020, after Bama lost to LSU and LSU won the national title and took all their juice, I was very much on the lookout for Angry Bama. And then Angry Bama steamrolled with maybe Nick Saban's best team. I do not think this is Angry Bama. I think this is like wounded Bama. I think this is perhaps like not losing it, but not what they once were. Bama. And now listen, they have, is it Dylan Lonergan's like the 4th quarterback, super young guy that everyone's all excited about. They're going to have another 5-star. Like quarterback things are real. You would take Ohio State's quarterback battle 100 times out of 100 compared to the Bama quarterback battle. So we just wanted to take a swipe at Bama. We don't think they're going to be that good.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are we getting angry Ohio State?
Yeah, no, I buy that. So you guys were talking about it. Like I think after losing, so there's a Taylor Swift song. I call it the Taylor Swift Halloween song because it sounds like a Halloween song to me. And it's the one where Taylor Swift says like, oh, Taylor's not here right now. She's dead. You guys know that, Taylor. Everyone heard of Taylor Swift? You guys know who Taylor Swift is, right? Liberty knows who Taylor Swift is. So like, right, that's the Ryan Day. Like Ryan Day's like, if you called Ryan Day right now, Ryan Day would be like, Ryan Day's not here right now. Ryan Day is dead. Because Ryan Day 1.0 ceased to exist after losing to Michigan twice in a row.
Doug, it's look what you made me do. Bring it home. Come on.
Look what you made me do. That's what gets you up on the stage. It's like if I say a Taylor Swift song name incorrectly, Austin's like, I can't stand for this. I'm going to ask a look what you made me do question to Ryan Day very specifically tomorrow. Ryan, hey, did you die after the Michigan game? So that's Ryan Day 1.0. This is the new Ryan Day. This is Ryan Day 2.0. Because you lose to Michigan twice in a row, and there's some segment of the fan base that wants you fired the next day, and it is an awakening of like, this is what this is. And not that you didn't know, but you knew. And everything since then is the new version of Ryan Day, which is like a game plan that's designed to beat Georgia that I think you can take into the Michigan game. And so this is the new world. And so would I call that like angry Ohio State? Yes, like angry Ohio State led by zombie Ryan Day, who's back from the dead. And I think like all of that might be very good for them.
Like a more energetic, like kinetic, not the slow moving dumb zombies.
No, the scary zombies.
Scary.
The zombies that'll get you.
Fast zombies.
So we also like to compare fast zombies. We also like to compare Ohio State to itself. It's the best standard to judge Ohio State. Ohio State 2014 national champions, average recruit rating of the 24 guys who played the most snaps on each side of the ball, 237. 237th ranked player in the country. This Ohio State team, 151. Those 24 guys for Ohio State that played in 2014, 6 of them went on to be first-round draft picks. 4 of them went on to be second-round draft picks. So 10 of your top 24 guys are taken in the first 2 rounds of the draft. Little shorthand, little pre-show shorthand. I got maybe 10 guys that are playing for this team, top 24 guys, that I think could be first or second-round picks out of this group.
Name them, please.
In order. Now, you know who they are. Everybody knows who they are. Sonny Styles, and then like Sonny Styles 10 times. Whatever, like Sonny Styles. I hope what we're doing to this man. He's 18. And everybody's like, you're the best Buckeye ever, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, I think I might be. He's very cool and calm about it, but we have to be a little careful. They have talent across the board, both sides. Bottom line, comparing Ohio State to what's out there now, which is the most important thing, and comparing Ohio State to the last team that won a national title here. I think the talent is at the very least on par, and maybe even better if it all peaks. And I think it's worth reminding people of that, because as much as you can take it for granted at a place like Ohio State, I don't think you could take it for granted the last couple of years, and I think it's back.
I agree that it's back. I think in some places it's better. Quite a few places it's better, and it's better probably at the most important position. No offense to Cardale. Cardale's a legend. I understand that. The standard of the position has changed since he won that national title. It's like the one thing you don't worry about. The thing that is keeping people, I think, nationally from embracing the idea of Ohio State being a national championship worthy team this year is the thing that I don't think anybody in Columbus actually worries about, which is who's going to be the starting quarterback. Whoever it is, and we'll talk about it, I think, in the next segment, is going to be good.
We are going to talk about it in the next segment right after this. Ohio State, we have coaching things to think about. We have specific parts of the team. The schedule is the schedule. They play some real opponents this year, which isn't always the case, but the talent is there. We'll be back with a quarterback segment next on the podcast.
All right, welcome back in another segment on the podcast daily, Kings of Columbus, Snappy Jays. It's all in one tonight. We're going to get into the quarterbacks as promised. So, Zach, you have to have somebody take the first snap, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is off.
Try now, Zach.
You turned me off, Berm.
Well,
He was trying to silence my mic. You
Impossible.
Can't do that.
Cannot silence
I know.
Zach Boren.
My voice, I could probably talk without a mic up
I
here.
thought we were going to be fine anyway.
I know. Someone has to run out and take the snap for sure. Are we going like who's going to be the starting quarterback throughout the season, or
taking the
who
first
is
snap?
running out and taking the first snap?
let's just start with
Well, you got to
that.
start
First snap,
somewhere.
Kyle McCord. He is running out and taking the first snap. Now, is he going to start game 2? Is he going to get most of the offensive snaps this Saturday? That I don't know. But running out, taking the very first snap of the 2023 Ohio State football season will be Kyle McCord.
Do you like the idea of them both playing on Saturday against Indiana?
I love the idea of both of them playing. I actually love the idea of both of them playing the first 3 games. I do not like the idea of a 2-quarterback system going to Notre Dame. Things have to be settled by the end of the Western Kentucky game. Just has to be. If you can't figure out who the starting quarterback is in camp, and I've been in camp where it's like, man, guys look great. One day it looks like Brett Favre. The other day it looks like, I love the guy, but Joe Bowserman. You know what I'm saying? Like, not to take a
We're
swing
just
at
throwing
my guy.
haymakers.
Those are two
love
polar
Joe.
ends of the
I know,
spectrum
I
right
love
there.
Joe. But, I think it's so hard in training camp as well because quarterbacks aren't allowed to scramble, right? They're always wearing the black jersey. Defenders are always so hesitant to get close to them. When you're playing the same offense over and over and over again, you're going to start jumping on stuff. I mean, as any defender, you're going to try and cheat the system, right? And overplay things. So you're only going to be able to get a full 100% view of what they're able to bring to the team in this offense when it's live action.
The way I look at it is this, though. You can play 2 quarterbacks in 2 different ways. So Ohio State can play both quarterbacks this Saturday against Indiana, and I think we'll see a fairly even number of snaps for both of them against IU. The question is, after that, what do you do against Youngstown State and Western Kentucky? Do you play a full game for each of them and tell them heading into the week, hey, this week it's Devin's, this week it's Kyle's? Or do you continue to rotate them? I think I personally would prefer that they go the route of saying, play the whole game. Kyle, you get Youngstown State, and Devin, you get Western Kentucky, and then figure it out from there. I don't believe that right now the adage of if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none is applicable to Ohio State. I think if you get to the Notre Dame game and you're still doing this, then maybe that becomes a little bit more true.
I think. Sorry, Zach. I want to argue with Berm about this. I don't think that works. If this battle is as even as Ryan Day has said throughout camp, and I may have been slow to recognize that he was actually telling the truth, and that I didn't believe it as much as I should have. We'll set all that aside. But if I'm taking him at his word now, one pulls ahead, the other comes back, runs back, takes the lead, and they're going back and forth, and you believe that it's even. Well, playing Western Kentucky and playing Youngstown State are not even. And one of those people would still have to be the quarterback at Notre Dame. So if you played week 2, next week, next guy doesn't do as well. Doesn't matter the order. Whoever makes the most of that, and then they have a week off before going to play at Notre Dame. I don't like it. I think if you're trying to make the situation as comparable and the playing field as level as you can possibly make it, which is what they've done throughout camp and what we saw in spring ball, you have to say, well, you both have to play against the same opponent, and then we're going to measure like for like.
Doug, who's right?
Zach is right.
Damn it.
Well, he always is. He always.
Thank you, Doug. I had a third opinion off of these guys, but go ahead.
Well, go with your third opinion. That's also probably
It'll
right.
be right. Yeah.
No. My third opinion is this weekend against Indiana, I very well could see it every other series, switching every other series.
Sounds awful.
If someone's in the flow, I don't like it. I do not like it at all, but I could very well see it happening that way. Now, come Western Kentucky, Youngstown State, I don't think it's this person play the game, that person play the game. What I think you do is say, hey, you've got 2 or 3 series, then you've got 2 or 3 series. So, because if someone's playing the whole game, like Austin said, 2 completely different opponents, 2 completely different skill sets. I don't think you see the full dynamic in what they're able to do because of that. I think you have, but I don't like the series by series. And I also don't like the half by half because if you're blowing out Youngstown State and blowing out Western Kentucky, the person who's taking the second half is probably more than likely playing with backups.
Right. Lincoln Keenholt should be playing at that point.
Correct. Lincoln should be playing. Right. My favorite of the 3. But no, I'm just kidding.
Do we want to go there? We are.
Oh, no. Well, he did
Lincoln,
it.
Is this
Zach,
a Lincoln Keenholz
You
podcast
said Zach
now?
is right, so you welcomed this.
It's not Lincoln Keenholz. Good try. It might be later, though. Do you want to do 30 seconds on Lincoln Keenholz? Do you think he's going to be the starting quarterback eventually at Ohio State in his career?
I 100% do. I think he.
Let's just go straight to Lincoln Keenholz, Air Noland. Whatever happens this year is fine.
I think Lincoln's going to be great. Is he going to be a starting quarterback this year? No. I know they've got a lot of very high expectations for him. He's a 4-sport athlete. I think 3 of them he was all state. Just unbelievable competitor. Just that kind of guy that people can get behind. And when you go out there with the athletic ability, the competitiveness, I don't know if you've seen his film of the basketball games in high school or baseball. He's just kind of that trash talker guy that everyone loves to play for. So I think at Ohio State, doesn't matter who you bring in the years to come, Lincoln Keenholz is going to be a dude here one day that's starting quarterback.
But he's not the dude this weekend.
No, he's not the dude this year either. It was a joke, bro.
So, Doug, who's the dude this weekend?
So my guess is it's going to be what you guys kind of talked about. I think it's going to be chunk by chunk. Kyle McCord's going to start, I'm almost sure. And I think he'll play 2 or 3 series. And then I think Devin Brown will play 2 or 3 series. And I think we're going to see that not prescribed exactly, not one series back and forth, not quarter by quarter. But I also think they want to make sure they're not creating a scenario where it feels like if a guy makes a mistake, he's yanked. And they also, I think they want to make sure guys don't try too hard to make plays. I think that is the main thing on their mind because Ryan Day has talked a lot about just make the routine plays, man. Like get it to Marv and we're good.
So I think it'll be chunk by chunk. Right? The 2015 problem.
Yes.
I get what you're saying, but I'm also going to argue that point a little bit because one of the knacks on these quarterbacks, and I'm not going to say who, but one of the knacks on one of these quarterbacks is he plays it too safe. He doesn't take the chances. I think Ryan Day wants to force one of these guys to take chances. So it's like, go make that play. Go make that big throw. Like in spring ball and training camp, this guy was taking the check down, taking the easy way out. And at some point, it's like, dude, we got to take some shots. We got to throw the ball down the field. We got to fit a ball in tight windows. If the look isn't there right away, get to your second or third read and still work down the field instead of automatically, if your first read's not there, go into your fourth read, which is your check down of either your tight end or your running back out of the backfield.
One thing I do like about this, which I didn't 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have said this, I don't think. And Zach brought it up, where as long as you get through the first 3 weeks and you make a permanent decision to get ready for Notre Dame and say, this is the guy, this is the plan, this is the offense. What I like about it for the team, the fans, myself, the media, like there's not going to be any guesswork. A lot of this, we get to watch 2 practices in fall training camp. And I'm going to steal a page from what Zach just did. One of these 2 guys had probably his 2 worst practices of camp when I was in there. And that's informed some of my thinking and opinions about how this battle would play out. Well, that's not fair to that person. If he had 19, 20, 23 other good days. If you go out there now and you show everybody when the live bullets are flying, we can all see it. There's not going to be any other way to interpret it. The numbers are going to be out there. The game film is going to be on broadcast to the world. We'll all be able to see it. And I hope that this means that not just that it's apparent for Ryan Day, but that everyone else can say, well, that guy earned the job. There's no uncertainty about it. And you don't have to argue and say, I don't know. I like this guy better. What are you basing it off of? I don't know. I just heard good things about his athleticism or his poise in the pocket or whatever else. We're going to know after 3 weeks. And I like that a lot more. I'll be okay with that. However it goes. I don't care who wins. Ohio State needs to have the best quarterback to put them in position to win a national championship. It does not matter who it is.
0% chance that both quarterbacks play against Notre Dame. Do we all agree on that?
0%. No, I won't say 0%. I think there will be a true starter for Notre Dame. I hope it does not go this way. I really hope. If we're 3 or 4 series into the game and Ohio State is not looking good on offense, the other quarterback will play.
If that happens, Ohio State has bigger problems.
No doubt. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. So don't say 0 chance. Because you very well could go into South Bend, Indiana, 7:30 p.m. primetime game, And if the Ohio State offense isn't moving the ball and Sam Hartman takes 14 on him real quick, and there's not much excitement, Coach Day will throw in the other quarterback. He just will. Now, I hope we do not get to that point.
You two are both huge Sam Hartman fans, so I think you're both expecting that to be the case.
No, I actually don't. I think Notre Dame, I think a lot of the national media, I think a lot of Ohio State fans, after watching them this past Saturday against Navy, thinks they are a much tougher opponent than what people originally thought. But I'm here to tell everyone it's Navy, who is god-awful, and I wish they were
I thought
better,
I texted you that.
Thank you for the service.
It's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same Navy of 4 or 5 years ago that was a solid opponent. It's not that same team.
Let me ask you this. As a guy who watched players around you go through a quarterback competition, how do you avoid the pitfall of trying to make big plays, of trying to do too much? Because that, I think, it was brought up earlier, that's one of the things that heading into this weekend that I think will be a differentiator between guys. Who's willing to just step up there and make the smart play solid football without being risky? Now, we expect Indiana to be sort of bad, but at the same time, Ohio State's been trailing at halftime the last 4 times they opened the season on the road. So this is a situation where the clock is moving a little faster because of the new rules. I mean, how do you avoid a guy going out there and just trying to do too much?
I don't think it's trying to do too much. Is you'll see the offense and Coach Day gravitate to the guy who's actually more relaxed, the guy who's taking what's there, the guy who's playing with a little bit of swagger, the guy who's playing freely. Like you can see the difference of a guy who's tensed up trying to make the big play, or a guy that's actually just like, hey, I'm gonna ball, I'm gonna sling it, I'm gonna trust myself. I've got maybe the best weapons in the entire country when you package the wide receiver and running back duos. I mean, it's going to be that guy. So you're not going to see a quarterback, be super uptight and say, I got to take a shot down the field to Marv within the first series because it's Marvin Harrison. That's what everyone wants to see. If you have that quarterback's going to get pulled and they'll go to the other guy.
I think that's the real equalizer for Ohio State, is that whoever wins this quarterback job gets to throw to Marvin freaking Harrison. And on the other side, he's got Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming. And in the backfield, he's got Travion Henderson. Like,
you forgot about Carnell Tate.
Well,
and
I could have kept going. Xavier Johnson, Cade Stover, Joe Royer, G. Scott. I mean, this team has so many weapons. We talked early on about the offensive line, and the quarterbacks are going to have every resource available to them that anyone could ever want. And so some of this where you talk, Zach, about if there's a conservative guy and he checks it down, like, he's playing against Ohio State's defense all of August, too, and you reference what it's like to go through a training camp, and guys are jumping routes, and JT Tuimoloau was coming at you. Like, it's hard. Everything's about to get a lot easier for whoever wins the quarterback job based on the opponents they're playing and the fact that they have the best, more talent than Georgia, I was told in the previous segment. So that seems like it might help whoever wins that job.
Here's the other thing. I don't know if I want to say this or not. I could almost guarantee that the first 5 plays on offense are all run plays. I can almost guarantee that. So when this team is running the football and being able to run the ball the way that I saw that they could in camp, and I know that they will against Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, those throws are going to be open on the back end. When you start gashing teams wide open and you let those running backs just find the creases and hit some big gains, it's going to be a lot easier to throw the football.
All right, well, that sets us up perfectly. We're about to start shifting gears, and Doug wants to start previewing the game already. It's late August, but it's never too early to talk about the rivalry. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on the podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. I don't know if you guys could hear what Zach was saying before we came back. Doug Lesmerises, Austin Ward, Bill Landis, Zach Boren. Zach, you have a quarterback package for Cade Stover this year.
I think you wanted to keep that private.
I did. That was like
if you come out to the show, there are no secrets among friends. People are drinking beer. They're hanging out. You got to tell them.
Till this gets out. I was like, if the quarterbacks go south, I've seen Cade Stover throw a football. I've seen him play softball. He plays shortstop, has a great arm. They're going to go Tebow package with Cade Stover. Let him throw it, get him back in the backfield. I mean, it's going to be unstoppable.
I thought it would just be another role for CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles.
We are officially at.
Where's Berm? Berm wants to show the Cameron Martinez touchdown reel for the other option to go in at quarterback.
How Lincoln Keenholz and Cade Stover led Ohio State to a national title over less talented Georgia. I think the summation of the show so far.
I'd watch that movie.
All right, so we're going to talk about the game. Before we do, I want to get a quick survey from our loyal fans here. Your two choices are this on the quarterback conversation. You're confident that it's going to work out, or you're a little worried about the Ohio State quarterback situation. Let's make some noise for confident it's all going to work out. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And don't give the side eye to people who might clap here. We're being honest. If you're a little worried about the Ohio State quarterback situation, make some noise. Okay, this guy,
he's telling honest.
It's okay.
Oh, my wife put her hands up. That's not good.
That's okay. So it was probably like
she doesn't believe me either.
85-15 maybe. So more confidence than worried, but I don't think worried is completely
I think you're being
irrational.
too generous to our guy. It was like
98-2. I know there was two guys. This guy and this guy.
He's got a sweet rugby shirt on.
I think everyone should be worried until Saturday.
Come up here and show this rugby shirt.
Saturday at like 5:30. Everyone should be worried until then.
That's fair. Michigan game. Two choices. You're confident. You feel good about where Ohio State is getting ready to play Michigan this year. And the other choice is you're worried about the Michigan game. Make noise if you're confident about Ohio State in the game. And now if you're worried about Ohio State in the Michigan game. Okay. Worried one.
Hold on, Doug. But don't you all always worry about the game? That's what I was told.
Not when Rich Rod was here.
Don't ever turn it off.
Don't act like you were worried when Brady Hoke was here. Nobody was worried then.
I'm not saying
Hey, I was worried. I got beat by him. What are you talking about? I got beat by Brady Hoke.
No, I know. And then you stood over the guy and looked down on the guy and made a trash can out of it. You're fine. You're nothing to be worried about. You're good. The game. Zach, do you believe that Ohio State needed to change things in how they attack Michigan and their mindset going into the game? Did they need to make changes for the 2023 version of the game? And if so, do you believe they have or they will?
I think they only needed one change, and I don't know if that change is schematically. I don't think it's a personnel thing. I think it's simply a toughness thing. You look back at the 21 game in Ann Arbor. You look back at 22. J.J. McCarthy, made two big passes in last year's game, but it was really the run game which burst things open. And I would actually argue that it's what opened up the long pass to the tight end late in the third quarter. I think when you go up to Ann Arbor this year, the defensive line needs to buck up. The linebackers need to buck up. It is a simply toughness thing because Michigan's going to want to line up and run right at you. That is Jim Harbaugh's MO. When he gets into a big game, it's not, I'm not going to open things up and try and score all these points. It's we're going to play great defense and we're going to run the ball at you and try and dominate the line of scrimmage. So you look at this offseason, what's Ryan Day do? What Coach Mickey Marotti do in the weight room? They concentrated on toughness and competing. And that's what it was all about. And so all it is when you get to the Saturday of Thanksgiving this year, it's a mindset going into that game. And that's the biggest difference.
I think in some ways, Doug, that Ryan Day took that toughness message way too far last year. And that sounds like an insane thing to suggest about a football program or a head coach. They all, as Zach is saying, want you to be the toughest and best version of yourself. But I think that the born on third base comment really irritated Ryan Day in a way that he started alluding to a little bit more this summer, that like I got too obsessed. I focused on maybe some of the wrong things. I had to prove something that was a little bit out of character. And I think the problem wasn't last year that, in my opinion, Zach, that they weren't tough enough. Like in the first half, they definitely were. And they missed some opportunities on offense that I think the play calling was out of character for Ryan Day. I think he spent a lot of last year trying too hard to say every 3rd and 2, we're going to smash mouth line up and go get it on the ground. When at their best. Well, it's 4th and 1. It's against Clemson in a college football playoff semifinal. Watch this. We're going deep. Like some of that, I think he lost himself trying to prove something specific about himself to Jim Harbaugh. And the rest of the team, I think, had closed some of the toughness gap. Now, maybe I am wrong about that. Certainly in the 3rd and 4th quarter, you look at what happened and it dissipated and got away from them pretty quickly. But if they don't miss one tackle, if they don't blow one coverage, that game would look really, really different last year. And maybe the toughness you're talking about is a 4-quarter thing, and we could shake hands and agree on that. But I think last year came down to more of a schematic and more of a coaching issue that I thought Ryan Day did fix in time for the Peach Bowl and nearly had them in position one play away to go win a national championship. And as long as that lesson is learned by Ryan Day, I think everything else will take care of itself. And I am betting that it will.
But see, you make great points, phenomenal points. But I would argue that your points are all on the offensive side of the ball. You come to play calling. You talk about just being tense and not taking chances when you should. You've got, in my opinion, if Michigan or if Ohio State beats Michigan, you might have the Heisman Trophy winner in C.J. Stroud. If he goes out and does what he can instead of kind of getting embarrassed on a national stage, he might be your Heisman Trophy winner. But you became very conservative. When you look at the defense side of the ball, I was in Ann Arbor in 21, right behind the visitors' bench, and I literally saw kind of the defeated look on Ohio State's guys' faces. They have their heads down. They're just not. It was that toughness that you look for, right? Instead, when you come off to the sideline and you give up a touchdown, especially when someone runs it right down your throat, are your shoulders up? Are you like, hey, let's go, come at me again, wipe the blood off my mouth and go attack them? Or do you tuck your tail? And you saw that in 21, and you saw that a little bit in last year in the second half. And that's from the defensive standpoint, it's the mindset of, hey, listen, they're going to run it right at us. We're going to be bleeding from the mouth. There's going to be snot coming out of our noses. What are we going to do, right? When there's that deciding play, whether it be a 3rd and short, 4th and short, in the second half, it's going to be a close game regardless, right? It's the game. What happens? What do you do?
Can this be both? Landis, can it be a bigger toughness discussion for Ohio State's defense? And then for Ohio State's offense, can it be more about exploiting the skill advantage they have and making sure that they're trying to win the game with Marv and Emeka and Travion?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am more aligned with Austin here, which
rare win.
I think
I'm going to be with Zach then. I'm with Zach. Zach.
Like
Smart play right there.
Here's the thing about it. Like, they didn't beat us that way. They beat us a different way the second year. Like, that's not good. Like, that's still a problem that they figured out a different way to beat you. They smacked you in Ann Arbor. You came back. I think you did answer that call a little more in terms of the toughness, better weather, team wasn't sick, whatever. They found another way to beat you. I think they did out-scheme them. I think that Jesse Minter, the new defensive coordinator, kind of picked up where Mike McDonald left off in terms of having a good game plan against Ryan Day's defense. And Michigan's offense figured out a way to use Jim Knowles' hyper-aggressiveness against him. It was a little bit of a combination of we're going to out-tough you and out-scheme you, but I think it was more of the latter this past year and more of the former 2 years ago. The result is you still lost 2 different ways, and you got to come correct in both regards in Ann Arbor this year. So you can be confident, I guess, that they're going to beat Michigan because you're an Ohio State fan. Maybe you should be. But that does not inspire a lot of confidence in me that they found a way to lose 2 different ways the last 2 years.
Zach, do you believe, from an intangible standpoint, this toughness, I mean, obviously that's part of it. Do you think Ohio State's heads will be right for that game in late November?
100%. I hate to be this guy, but at some point, Michigan had to win, right? At some point, it's the greatest rivalry in all of sports. And you look at the run from, basically 2000, right? 2000 till, even through this past year. Michigan had to come back and win in this rivalry, and they did in 21 in a very big way. So you go into 2022, and I agree, there was a lot of pressure on those guys. Those guys were like, man, we got beat for the first time in a while and got manhandled up in the big house. We're supposed to come out and win this game. And do I think they played a little bit tight? Yes. But at some point, I almost think going into this game, they're relaxed, right? You've lost 2 years in a row. It's kind of like, hey, this isn't a win or die type thing, and I'm not saying it in that way. But last year was almost like, hey, we got our ass beat. We have to be able to win this game, especially at home. Now you're going on the road. You've gotten beat 2 years in a row. Now it's almost like, hey, instead of us being the hunted, now we're the hunters. And there's a different mindset when you do that, especially going into enemy territory and saying like, hey, we're coming for you. Well, it's not you're coming for us. We're coming for you. And psychologically, it's a lot different, especially when you travel 70 guys, you're in an away locker room, you don't have all the distractions that you do when you play a home game. It's not senior day. It's just completely different.
I think that part's really important to keep in mind, Zach, that like whatever happens in the previous 11 weeks, I think when they get to that one, you look at this roster, the captains, the veterans, the seniors, they don't have something that you have. They don't have a set of gold pants. Because of what happened with Jim Harbaugh and dodging things in 2020, that game didn't exist. That's 3 years without a win for Ohio State. That's just the reality of it. They would have lost 100-0 in that game. It was the biggest spread in the history of the game. Michigan knew what was coming to it that week, but it doesn't matter. They didn't give them gold pants because they didn't go out and earn it. So there's
Did they give him one leg? Could you get one leg?
I thought
a COVID leg.
I thought they should have
a belt, a gold belt.
I thought they should have and just put the point spread on it.
Oh, that'd be good.
Hey, you're
good. Buy them.
It was like 38.5.
We'll get a collection going to buy 2020.
There's enough
gold socks.
I don't think
gold socks.
But here's the point, Doug. I don't think they want it. Right? They want to earn it. You don't want to be handed anything in the rivalry, or that would diminish the importance of it. So these guys, think about Marvin Harrison. If he were to leave after 3 seasons playing and have no Big Ten championship ring, no set of gold pants, no national championship, which, the third part can happen without the first 2. I get that, but that's the motivation. There may have been some complacency that crept into 2021, and then they may have overcorrected in some respects and maybe not in others, but they didn't get it done in 2022. Well, some of these guys, this is the last chance they're going to have.
I'll also say there's something to be said about getting punched in the mouth, right? You look at 2021, it was such a young team. And those guys had been on a high for all the success they had. Granted, they had lost some Final Four games, but hey, it's the Final Four, right? It's college football playoff. When you get into last year's team, I still think there was a sense of, hey, we're the Ohio State Buckeyes. We're going to roll through this. And you saw that, 11-0 going into the Michigan game. And then still you got punched in the mouth. And then again, we already talked about it, but the defeat against Georgia, I think, is just like heart-wrenching. So many of those guys came back because of that feeling. Like, hey, listen, we've gotten punched in the mouth. Now we want to throw some punches. And so there's something to be said when you have a team that has that mindset. Like I said, you're the hunters instead of being the hunted. And so many of those guys now know what it's like to taste that defeat, to kind of have that heart-throbbing defeat. Now they're ready to go at them.
I want to end on this point for the Ohio State-Michigan game. I think we have to brush on it. I will be surprised if Ohio State is not in the right frame of mind for the Michigan game. I also think it's possible Ohio State could be there mentally, could be there emotionally. They're the most talented team in the country and not win, because I think Michigan's very good. So I think there's 2 things at play. Do you get the best version of Ohio State? I think that's a must for this program, and I think that will happen. But also Michigan's good. Like how do we try to? We don't have to do that all the way right now, Landis, because it's not November. But we have to remember that too, that Michigan's still part of this equation, and they're good at football.
Yeah, I don't know that Michigan has quite used their recent success to their advantage as much as they should have, or should have been expected to in terms of roster building. But they are very good. They're at least on offense. They're like much better than they've been on offense, I think, in the last decade. A different kind of quarterback. Maybe you can make the argument they're a little less than on defense. They lost some guys. Like the last 2 years, they lost a lot of dudes. And they have to show an ability to, I guess, re-up that the way that Ohio State has. So I think you're right. I think all that can happen, but Michigan's still very good, and Michigan can still win. This talent gap is still pretty wide on paper. So if they come correct, Ohio State, I think it could, like we've seen some of the urban teams, right? They put a whooping on them because the talent gap showed up that day. I think that's also possible.
The scary part is, I think this year on paper, and from what they have coming back, this is probably the most talented Michigan team in the last 25 years. If you look at it, the amount of depth, the amount of talent that they have, especially on the offense side of the ball, and yeah, they've lost some guys on defense, but they still have a really solid defense. Their one weak link is maybe the corner opposite of Will Johnson, but outside of that, this is the strongest team Michigan has had in a very long time.
You're just saying that because Rachel's over there now.
No, I say, hey, she should be worried for our marriage if Michigan wins again this year. It will not be good.
Wow. Let's tell Ryan Day that.
We tell the truth on this show,
Yeah,
folks.
oh my gosh, she'll tell you I won't be going to Thanksgiving. Nothing.
Ryan, Zach really needs you guys to win this one. That'll motivate him. Okay. We are going to now move in to our season prediction part of this. We're going to talk about holistically the entire Ohio State season, and we're going to start it with Zach Boren. We're going to talk about, everyone's going to give their reason for optimism about this team, the reason for concern, and then make a record prediction. So, Zach, what are you most optimistic about for the Ohio State Buckeyes this year?
What I'm most optimistic about, and I hope I'm not taking the easy way out on this one, is the depth of this team. We saw last year, especially coming down the stretch, and we saw it in 2021, that, guys get sick, there's some injuries, there's a big drop-off. And I think this year more than ever, besides really the quarterback position, even on the offensive line, and people are saying it's thin, there are some solid backups on the offensive line. So when you talk about depth and what you're able to put out there, those guys are deep and they are strong, and those guys, there's not a huge talent gap from first to second string like we've seen in the past. I think especially down the stretch in the Big Ten, especially knowing that, hey, our bye week is the last week of September, which is an awful bye week, but you hope for, middle to end of October is always a great one. But the end of September, there's a stretch run there where you are in the thick of it, especially Penn State, Wisconsin, then Minnesota, who knows how they're going to be, Michigan State, and obviously Michigan. That's a tough, six game ending of the schedule. What's going to happen when guys get dinged up? Are you able to put guys out there on the defensive line, at linebacker, in the secondary, that those guys can be able to go out there and play?
I know, Landis, when we were doing the talent thing, you went top 38 or something on this team? You saw the depth of talent too, right?
Yeah, 38 was the number I landed on. That included both quarterbacks, so I guess it's more 37 to be fair. 33 of them were blue chips. The average recruiting ranking of those 37 players was 125 in the country, a high-end 4-star prospect. It is pretty deep. It's probably as deep as it's been since I've been covering the team going back to 2014.
It makes me a little crazy when you have a guy like CJ Hicks as a second-year player who he's not going to start. They're trying to find a role for him. But I guess on the other hand, if it's CJ Hicks is a backup, it's okay, you must be pretty good then. Right?
Yeah, quite honestly, I don't know. I mean, just thinking out, I don't know how CJ Hicks sees the field unless a guy gets injured. And that's not me knocking on CJ Hicks. I think he's a phenomenal player. I've stood next to him in person, and I'm like, my God, I wish I was built like that, But
yeah, I also wish I was built like that, Zach. You don't have to tap me on the shoulder.
I know. But
hey, Mr. High School golfer, do you wish you were built like CJ Hicks?
But
yes.
Usually I'm right next to him, and I take the brunt of that.
I don't want to.
I know.
That's why I have the buffer here tonight, Tux.
But I don't see a path how CJ Hicks gets on the field. Now, maybe if it's passing downs, you're playing a spread team, I could see them throwing him out there. But how do you take Tommy and Steele off the field? I don't know how you do.
Sometimes a good way to judge a team is how good your second team is. We're talking about that, which is what you're saying. All right, concerns. What could be a thing that is a concern?
It's got to be quarterback, right? I mean, I hate to take that one too. It's so easy, but that's probably where I worry about the most. And with this schedule going on the road to Notre Dame week 4, that's where I get worried. Is what's a first-year starting quarterback going to do if you face some adversity in a big-time matchup with an offense that can put up some points? And I made the joke earlier, hey, if the defense doesn't give up any points, you're going to go undefeated, right? I hate to say it, there might be some games this year where Ohio State might run the ball 30 or 40 times. And when's the last time we saw that? I mean, it's been a long time since probably the Urban days, right? Where they actually had 30 or 40
with 25 rushes. Of them were JT Barrett.
No doubt. No doubt. But that's the one thing that maybe worries me a little bit, that if you do get behind in a game and you need the quarterback to go out there and come from behind and make some big plays like we've seen CJ Stroud and Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins do year over year, what's going to happen when you get in those situations?
The Oregon game, in 2021, right? CJ Stroud didn't lose that game. He threw for 350 yards, but Ryan Day's talked about this.
500 yards.
The defense wasn't good enough. The run game wasn't good enough. And you wind up in a situation where you're losing and CJ has the ball for a final drive and throws a pick. And it's like he, at that point, wasn't ready to be that quarterback. That situation, if you get caught there, it's not that Devin Brown or Kyle McCord won't be that. But if they have to be that in week 4, are they ready to be that quarterback?
You brought up a great point, the Oregon game, right? CJ Stroud went off. He didn't lose in that game. But to your point, first-year starter, what are you going to do? Facing some adversity, you got to make a big play. You got to lead the team down the field. If you need a 2-minute situation, if you need anything from that standpoint where a veteran quarterback is so good, what happens?
If you would add Stetson Bennett.
Or Cade Stover.
Or if they hadn't missed an obvious pass interference call.
Wanted to work Stetson Bennett in the show at some point. All right. We are going to ask you for a record. What do you think? Whatever you want to say about Ohio State season, at the very least, a regular season record. If you want to go beyond that, feel free.
Regular season, that's a tough one. I wasn't prepared for this, but
it's on the sheet. It says predicted record 3 minutes right there on the sheet.
He asked me how he needed to prepare for the show, and I didn't send him that.
I didn't handed you a sheet.
See, you're the organizer.
You said I'm a winger.
I know. I only read the first page, not the second. You want to know something? I really, truly want to say 12-0. My gut tells me 11-1, but I'm going to go 12-0. I truly think this team's going to come out and win every game. And the only reason why isn't because of last year, because I thought last year they were going to outscore every single team. I think this year that this defense is going to be so much better than what people have seen. The 2019 defense comes to mind of how good and deep it was. I think this defense is going to give that 2019 defense a run for its money.
He's Zach Boren. He's a great Buckeye. He was kind enough to join us out here at
He also
Land-Grant.
knows what it takes to go 12-0. So if he says it's going to happen.
He does. You did. Oh, you just said 12-0 every
Doug,
year then.
You interviewed me my 12-0 year, I think.
I did.
Multiple times.
I also interviewed you one time, and I was like, hey, you're a fullback. Wouldn't it be cool if you moved the defense at some point? And then you moved the defense like 6 weeks later and didn't give me a heads up.
I wasn't allowed to talk to the media that week.
Okay, well.
I wasn't.
That was a true thing. He did give some people a heads up. But
not me.
Won't say who.
He is Zach Boren. Thanks so much for being out here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jeremy Birmingham will be back up here, and Bill, Austin, Berm, and I will give our predictions for the season next on the podcast. And we are back on the podcast. Doug, Austin, Landis, and Berm. We're going to give our reasons for optimism, our reasons for concern, predicted record, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Berm, we'll start with you. What are you most optimistic about for the Buckeyes?
It's the most talented team in the country.
Well, I've heard that. Great analysis.
Now, honestly,
how does it compare to Georgia?
I've talked a lot in the last 10 days about Travion Henderson and why I think he will be back to the Travion Henderson we saw in 2021 as a freshman. And I think that opportunity to have a truly dynamic, explosive running game coupled with these wide receivers is what I'm most excited about. I think that he's healthy and he's going to be back to what he was. And if that's the case, I don't think anyone will slow down this offense.
We have to remember in every analysis of last season that their entire running back room got hurt and they couldn't run the ball, and that probably is not going to happen again, Austin.
It does get, I think, forgotten because so many things had to go against Ohio State in the second half, or even in the build-up to it with Travion Henderson already being out. But we focus a lot on Marvin Harrison and the targeting that was overturned. But even before that, you had Travion out, as I mentioned. Mayan Williams was banged up. He was not healthy. That impacted the running game. You had Cade Stover get knocked out. That impacted the blocking plus another option to throw the ball. You're trying to go down the field, and C.J. Stroud is doing everything he can in the fourth quarter. And as much as we all love and appreciate what Xavier Johnson provides, that was like the last gasp hope. Forget about Jackson not being in there because that was the whole season. But, 5 of the weapons that you were going to be counting on offensively were not there. And CJ's trying to move them down, gets them close enough to kick a field goal. We can argue if they could have done anything else different once they got into that point. But there were so many other things just purely from a personnel standpoint when you're going head-to-head against Georgia and you're looking at that talent number. Well, Ohio State was playing with a short deck in the second half, and they still nearly beat them. And I think sometimes that gets underappreciated, the amount of challenges that were thrown their way and the fact that Ohio State still nearly pulled it off.
All right, Berm, reason for concern.
All offseason has been the offensive line. Even though I feel a lot more confident in that now than I did 4 weeks ago, I still think that's the area because, as you've talked about, there's a lot of depth across this roster, except on the offensive line and especially not at tackle, that I think is quality depth that you can run out there and win a national championship with. So to me, it's about Josh Simmons and Josh Fryer emerging as true bookend tackles that you can count on play in, play out, but then making sure that you don't have any injuries there in a position that is oftentimes, injury filled because it's so physical. But I just don't feel like there's a lot of confidence in the guys behind them. And if you get down to that, that's a problem because it will short circuit everything else.
It can be easy to forget how important offensive line health is just in checking on the 2014 talent for Ohio State. The 5 offensive linemen for the Buckeyes in 2014 all played more than 1,000 snaps. They were healthy on the offensive line all year. And usually when you find the most successful Ohio State seasons, more often than not, you'll find that Urban's start of his career as Ohio State, remarkable health on the offensive line.
He was incredibly blessed. I think that year was 3 in a row, the first 3 for Urban Meyer, where nobody was missing a start due to injury. I think that may have even continued in 2015 to some extent. I don't know how long it lasted, but he was fortunate and lucky. Those first few teams that he had did not have tremendous depth, and they weren't tested. They were lucky that they got through it. You had Reed Fragel starting every single game for that Zach Boren 2012 team after converting from tight end. Like, if that hadn't worked out, it could have got pretty dicey in a hurry.
I think they were more or less healthy from the start on the offensive line, from the start of Urban's tenure right up until the 2016 Fiesta Bowl against Clemson. And, didn't work out well.
Didn't work out after that. We will bring up 2016 again in a bit. Landis, what's your reason for optimism this year?
Jim Knowles' track record in year 2 as a defensive coordinator. If you go back and look at Duke, look at Oklahoma State, they made pretty tangible, large jumps just sort of statistically. And neither one of those defenses started from anywhere close to where Ohio State is starting off, certainly in terms of talent, but also just in terms of baseline production from last year. I know that the things got away from them a little bit. Michigan and the Georgia games, you can question some play calls. I know I do, and it's fair to. The overall body of work defensively, I thought was very good last year. And you felt the defense more. They were more physical. Probably didn't make enough plays in the backfield, but made more. I think affected quarterbacks more. I think all that gets ratcheted up this year. I believe in the idea of the system just kind of taking hold a little more, guys getting more comfortable, and a defensive system that has been as productive as it has been under Jim Knowles. Now with this kind of talent, all the guys they have coming back, I struggle to find a path to them being anything better than anything worse than very good.
Berm, it feels like a lot of people are on that year 2 of the Knowles. Is there any reason to not think that's going to be true? Like, hey, year 2 of Knowles, track record, yeah, of course they'll be better.
College football isn't about defense anymore. I think that's the biggest reason for me. You would talk about that Michigan game and that Georgia game ad nauseum. Georgia gave up 1,000 yards to LSU and Ohio State in the SEC championship game and the Peach Bowl. Michigan gave up 55 points to TCU. I mean, and people rant and rave about how great Michigan's defense is. They gave up half a hundo to TCU. So I just don't think the defense is where you win championships anymore. I think you have to get 3 or 4 stops.
Is Zach coming on the stage?
Zach is breaking out in hives over there. Oh my goodness.
I think you have to get 3 or 4 stops, 3 or 4 key stops in the games against elite talent equated teams, 3 or 4 stops, and that's how you win. You're not going to see 10-7 championship games anymore. I think you're going to see a lot of those 45-42 games.
I agree with that. Doug and I did a whole podcast about how important is defense.
I don't watch your show. What's it called?
You should check it out. It's called Kings of Columbus. It's on the podcast feed.
It's very long.
It's produced by Berm. He's a good guy.
That doesn't mean that he watches it.
That's true.
He just fires it up on the internet and says what happens. I think it's about generating havoc, turnovers, splash plays, that kind of stuff. And Ohio State's defense did not do enough of that last year. Hasn't really done enough of it for like 3 years since 2019, really. So go back 4 years now. I thought I saw enough progress last year that makes me optimistic that they're going to be a more havoc-generating defense this year.
All right, Landis, what's your reason for concern?
Offensive line. Like I don't know what it could be besides that.
Hey, I thought you were in love with Josh Fryer.
Josh Fryer is my guy. I'm riding for him.
I think it's his reason for optimism and his reason for concern.
It's his reason for living.
I contain multitudes. I like Josh Fryer a whole lot. I will be the guy who pounds the table for Josh Fryer. Doesn't mean he's going to be awesome. Like, just because I think he's good doesn't mean he's going to be. I worry about the left tackle position. We have not talked about center. Like, we just talked so much about the tackle position. Like, they're starting a brand new center.
Top 100 player Carson Hinsman. You don't need to worry about guys who are top 100 players. They never, ever end up being bad players.
He was like 250 pounds last year. Now he's going to play center in the Big Ten. Like, it's a thing. If I had my belief is that they will be good enough up front on the offensive line this year. Spoiler alert, I guess, for my record prediction in a few minutes, but that is the area. I'm not worried about quarterback. Whoever plays is going to be good. I don't think they're going to mess it up. I don't think Ryan Day and Brian Hartline are going to get in each other's way when it comes to play calling. So then what else is there besides the offensive line?
I do think it's worth a reminder. People like to put out stats from NFL preseason that are mostly meaningless, but DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler in Cleveland as 4th and 6th round picks had excellent preseasons, and Paris Johnson is being Paris Johnson in Arizona. It is a reminder those 3 guys were awesome last year. Like, they didn't just lose their starting tackles and a center. Like, Austin, they lost excellent starting tackles in the center.
Yeah, well, they lost 3 NFL players, and that's a big deal. One of them before they were ready to lose him. Another, that's Luke Whippler. Another in DeJuan Jones, who could have returned for another year. And imagine how much differently we'd be talking about this Ohio State offensive line if he was back. So that is a big deal. Now, they were also coached by Justin Fry for a year. He doesn't get credit for their entire development, but he helped finish it off. He got a lot out of Luke Whippler. He got a lot out of DeJuan Jones last year. So I think, you look at Justin Fry's track record, the way that other people in the coaching profession talk about him. Like, you should have enough raw material plus quality coaching with him and Mike Seleni to get these guys to unleash their potential. But to Bill's point, you still don't know. You still have to go out there and do it week after week after week in the Big Ten. And to your other point, Doug, you have to stay healthy enough to go do it.
So you think it will be a big loss for Ohio State when Ohio State beats Indiana by 50 and Justin Fry is Indiana's head coach next year?
That's not the ideal scenario for Ohio State, no.
Yeah, it's going to halfly them. Okay. Austin, reason for optimism.
Yeah, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. by himself, but the wide receiver unit as a whole is far and away the best, not just the best wide receiver group, it is the best position unit in the entire country. And when you watch Marvin Harrison Jr. work, and we've talked a lot about the offensive line and new quarterbacks and the difficulty, and I mentioned it about an hour ago, what helps you is having truly elite wide receivers. You're not going to have to make a lot of hard throws. There's no one in the country that can cover Marvin Harrison, period. And even if you do somehow do it, like Michigan State did, he's going to pull off an alien Gumby move at the end zone and score. You can't stop him. So that is a huge deal, and it shouldn't be taken for granted. And maybe Ohio State fans already know this because they were so excited, and I was too, to watch what Jackson Smith and Jigba could do a year ago, and it was gone like that. Didn't get a chance to see it. You don't want that to happen. I'm knocking on wood for Marvin Harrison Jr. and his own health, but it shouldn't be taken for granted when you get to watch greatness. You should appreciate every opportunity you get. Bill and Berm and I have both talked about this. The number of times that, Doug, you've been in there to watch him just practice on the Monarch. It is absolutely a sight to behold. Even watching him practice is cool. So that you get 12 guaranteed opportunities, health being what it is, maybe 15 to watch this guy do it for one more year. He's one of the greatest ever to walk through the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And I'm going to appreciate it because of the Jackson situation, but also because he deserves a year that Jackson didn't get.
It's making me emotional.
I know. It's real. Listen.
Preach.
That deserves applause because it is easy to take greatness for granted, for land granted. And that's not what we should do. Like, you can't be in the business of that. To freak out over every little thing that goes wrong and be like, yeah, Marvin had 1,800 receiving yards, whatever. So we sometimes have to stop and do that. I can remember when Greg Oden was here for one basketball season early in that year, looking up at like a half-empty shot and sort of yelling at the empty upper deck saying, like, do you people not realize what this is? He's going to be gone.
Your voice just bounced right back at you, too, because it was so empty.
Watch this and appreciate this. Marv is special. Concern. Austin.
regular listeners and watchers of the podcast will know that my concern is about not playing the best players in the best moments. That's mostly targeted specifically to the defensive line. And I think that there's been give and take about that. I understand Larry Johnson's desire to have guys healthy into the fourth quarters of games and to play 15 games. I can't argue with it, and he is a legendary position coach. Who am I? I am not that. I just don't like watching a team have 1st and 10 on their 5-yard line and Ohio State having their 2nd and 3rd team defensive linemen out there. It put them in bad situations multiple times, and not just against Notre Dame, but also against teams they should be bullying in the trenches, like Northwestern, where it nearly came back to bite them. Zach Boren and I talk about this all the time. You want your best players to decide the outcome, and that can happen in the first quarter. It can happen in the second quarter. It doesn't have to be in the second half of games. So maybe you don't play JT until he pukes. Maybe Mike Hall doesn't play 55 snaps. Maybe Jack Sawyer is not ready to play every single third down of consequence. I don't know that. Larry Johnson is much more qualified to make that decision than I am. But if there are high leverage situations, Ohio State is absolutely giving itself its best chance to win when JT is on the field, when Mike Hall is on the field, when a healthy, motivated Tyleik Williams is causing problems on the inside, when Jack Sawyer or Kenyatta Jackson, whoever you decide it to be, they need to be on the field when the game is on the line, and that doesn't have to mean in the second half.
That has been discussed. Ryan Day made it sound like that was going to happen. Berm, do you think that will happen more this year?
No.
I tried.
Doug, what about you? A reason for optimism, where do you go?
I walked up the field with Tim Walton one day, and I was trying to talk to Tim Walton about could these 3 corners be maybe something like the 2016 corners with Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, and Denzel Ward. And Tim Walton basically told me to chill out, man. But like maybe a little bit of a light version of that. And I think to have 3 corners like Denzel Burks, Jordan Hancock, and Davis Enigmignosin, that you can play all 3, you can rotate, you can keep them fresh. They have different skill sets that complement each other. I think we will see the best across the board, even better than Okudah and Arnett, I think, in 19. I think the best across the board cornerback play at Ohio State that we've seen since 2016.
I think that's the kind of stuff that unlocks what I was talking about, the more plays in the backfield. The cornerback play has not been sticky, for lack of a better word. Like guys have been sort of comfortably open, and quarterbacks have been able to get the ball away in a half second before they get sacked, or even less than that. And a lot of the defensive linemen have expressed frustration with that point. Like they feel like they got off the ball well. They felt they were right there, and the ball was just gone. Like they couldn't get the sack. That's on the secondary. As much as it is on the defensive line, that's on the secondary. And I agree with you. I think that this corner group is going to get them back to where they have been, not that long ago when they were causing quarterbacks confusion with just how good they were in coverage, and then everyone up front eats.
Concern, Doug?
I talk about the tackles for 100 minutes on a previous show, so I'm not going to do it here. I just think a world where you take a guy who's a right tackle at San Diego State and you say he's going to be the starting left tackle at Ohio State. And it's like, oh, was he the best tackle in the Mountain West last year? It's like, no, he wasn't. He was the lowest graded tackle in the Mountain West. It's like, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not about Josh Simmons. It's about the situation that Ohio State put itself in. And I don't know that he won the left tackle job. I just don't think they had anyone else to put there.
Well, that's where Paris Johnson was supposed to be.
I know. I said the plan was beg Paris to stay, and it didn't work.
Well, they tried.
I had, I won't say who, a former Ohio State assistant coach, very important one, long time ago.
Oh, Billy Davis.
Billy Davis. Called me on Saturday night and left me a 3-minute voicemail about how Doug is wrong about Josh Simmons. So take that for whatever it's worth.
And that is the first time anyone has ever left a voicemail saying that I'm wrong. All right, so that's out there. Best of luck to them. I'm happy to be wrong. I just think it's an unusual situation for Ohio State to be sort of this desperate at tackle. It's not normally what they do here. Let's make record predictions. I'll go first. I think 2 Big Ten teams make the playoff. I'm not going to pretend I know exactly how it's going to shake out with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan right now. I think this schedule is too hard to go 12-0. I think the 2016 schedule is a decent reference. Wisconsin was in the top 10 when Ohio State beat them. Oklahoma on the road in that non-conference game was very highly ranked. Ohio State beat them. Michigan, it was a 2-3 game, right? And they beat Michigan, and they lose at Penn State, and they make the playoff because they played a great schedule. I think at Notre Dame, at Wisconsin, at Michigan, and home for Penn State, I think it's hard to win all four of those. So I don't know for sure which one it is, but I think Ohio State's 11-1, and I think that gets them in the playoff. Berm, what's your prediction?
Also 11-1. I'm going to drill down, and I think they will lose at Wisconsin. They play Penn State the week before. It's always the most physical game on the schedule for Ohio State. It's going to be at night, hyper emotional in Columbus. I think that you go to Wisconsin at night. Luke Fickell, his first chance against Ohio State. That's a tough spot to play in a normal year. You put all those factors into it. I think that will be an upset in Madison. But I think Ohio State will beat Penn State and beat Michigan and make the playoff.
Landis?
I am on record with 12-0. I don't disagree with anything you said about the schedule.
No one ever claps for 11-1.
I like to pander to our people. At Notre Dame is tough.
But you think Sam Hartman is terrible?
I think Sam Hartman is handsome and an okay quarterback. I don't think their defensive line is very good. It's not nearly as good as it was last year.
How many points is handsome worth?
3.
Great
minds. I don't think that game ends up being as difficult as we're envisioning. I think Wisconsin is tricky due to the location. I do not know what to make of that team and like their offensive transition they're doing there with the half air raid, half Barry Alvarez stuff. I don't know what that's going to look like. I believe in Luke Fickell. I just don't know if I believe in him this year. So I think that's a win. Don't trust James Franklin as far as I can throw him. So he's not going to win that game.
Penn State alum Bill Landis.
That's right.
And just got them on his side. Why did you do that?
Yeah. And
trying to get him back on our side.
I think they figured it out against Michigan this year. I know I said the thing about them finding a way to lose 2 different ways is not all that inspiring. But if Ryan Day can bottle up what he became in the Georgia game and extrapolate it over this season and make sure he brings it to Ann Arbor, which I think he will, they win that game. 12-0. Playoff. Lose a national championship. Sorry.
Austin, predicted record to you?
So I'm kind of torn when I thought about it, that it's easy to say 11-1 and just something weird's going to pop up across the course of the year, but
it's exactly what I said, and you're like being dismissive.
I'm just talking about me.
It's easy for him to say. It's hard for you to say.
So you're picking 9-3.
I think so, but if you're going to do that, and Berm drilled down, he picked it. I'm going through the schedule, and I've been told repeatedly Ohio State is the most talented blue chip roster in the country. And if you go through one by one, I would want to know which one it really was going to be. If I was going to say it's got to be 11-1, I just don't think it is, because I don't think that Notre Dame can beat Ohio State. I don't think, especially, that James Franklin can beat Ohio State in the horseshoe. I think everything we talked about in the game this year is about to turn the other direction. This team is far too motivated for that. I think Wisconsin is a massive challenge, probably bigger than maybe that gets credit for when you nationally, if you look at the schedule. But I know how long it took Luke Fickell to change that culture. I believe in him and Brady Collins, their strength coach, the 2 guys who know what it takes to build a program in the image of Ohio State. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen at Cincinnati overnight. They'll make things difficult, but I don't think that they are good enough 1 through 85 to beat Ohio State. And the truth is nobody is, because Ohio State's going to go 15-0.
If the Buckeyes make the playoff, they're winning the national championship this year. I don't see the heartbreaking Clemson/Georgia type loss. If they get there, if they take care of that Michigan monkey on their back in late November, they're winning the national championship.
The other blue bloods are vulnerable, right? I mean, I think Georgia, with trying to replace an offensive coordinator and a new quarterback. We talked about Bama. Clemson has a new coordinator, but Clemson hasn't been Clemson. Like, it's a good chance that if Ohio State gets there, they're going to face a program that's not as good as Ohio State's program. Now, could LSU or Washington or Texas or Florida State on a one-off? I don't know. But this is I'm glad we ended with you, Austin, 15-0. Let's quickly go out to our loyal people. The sun has gone down. We still have our people watching us here. Your choices are going to be undefeated Ohio State, whatever that means to you, or they lose a game in the regular season. Those are your two choices. We'll start with lose a game in the regular season. Make some noise. Dead.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Dead silence.
I got him fired up, baby. Let's go.
Undefeated Ohio State. Make some noise.
Doug, can I ask you one question before we sign off here? Ohio State's replacing a quarterback and an offensive coordinator, and everyone in the national media landscape makes it out to be the most challenging thing in college football. Georgia's doing the same thing. Alabama's doing the same thing. Clemson's doing the same thing, and nobody gives a crap. Why is that?
That's a different podcast, Perm.
Yeah. Well, you guys want to go another 90? We can go another 90 right now if you want to. Here's the thing.
We got to talk to the people at Land-Grant.
Clemson, Georgia, and Alabama are actually replacing their offensive coordinators. Garrett Riley, that's a new system at Clemson. Mike Bobo, they're doing the same kind of thing at Georgia, but I don't know how good he's got. He's done it before. I don't think he's very good. And Tommy Rees from Notre Dame is completely new. Ohio State, Ryan Day's the offensive coordinator, no matter who the offensive coordinator is. So that's the thing about it. It's a completely different situation what we're talking about with those other teams. So I can't answer for
what everyone says.
They're wrong.
They're wrong.
We'll come back.
We figured it out.
To listen to that conversation on the Podcast Daily for Wednesday.
So we will bring you the Podcast Daily. We'll bring you Kings of Columbus, Bermanology, dropping stuff. Buckeye Q will be coming down the line.
Zach Boren will be back for that. Snappy Jays. We got it all.
We have it all on the podcast feed, and we couldn't do it without you guys. So thanks to everybody listening on pod. Thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. But thanks most of all to everybody who came out to Land-Grant Brewing. Make some noise for yourself. You are the most loyal, the podcast and the Ohio State football fans in Columbus. Congratulations to you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks to Zach Boren, for Jeremy Birmingham, Austin Ward, and Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the live podcast at Land-Grant Brewing.